Okay, this time we're looking at another Mrs. H psychology clip to help you with your exam technique. Again, it is AQA Psychology. We're looking at paper 1, the memory topic, but this time it's a research question within memory. So as you know, research methods can come into all 3 papers. You've got a big section in paper 2, but it will come up in paper 1 and paper 3 as well. And here is a good example of that. So if we have a look at the specific question. It says psychologists conducted a case study of patient X, an individual who developed severe amnesia following a car accident. Patient X has difficulty storing new long-term memories, though his short-term memory and his memory for events that happened before the accident are unaffected. Okay, so it's leading you down a memory path, but the problem is that could easily mislead you, and you need to be very careful because the question here is evaluate the use of case studies like patient X in psychological research, but it's not talking to you about, it's not asking you about patient X and his scenario, it's about the use of case studies. And in my experience, a lot of students will misinterpret this. Certainly those of you who did this as a mock, for me, there were a number of you who did misinterpret. So the evaluate the use of case studies is important. It's 5 marks. And as I say, it's about case studies, not this particular case. So what do you need to include? Let's have a look at this. Well, we know a lot about case studies, and I'll just run through some of these points. We know that we get a lot of very rich, detailed, qualitative data from case studies. What we do with a case study is we interview and we delve into the reasons why somebody has behaved in that way. So we'll interview them, we'll interview friends, family, etc., etc. That's the procedure. But this time it's actually evaluating them, not saying what happens in it. So we would want to say that we've got lovely, rich, detailed, qualitative data from it. We get fantastic insight, we get high ecological validity. This is the person's real world. So we get lovely validity from it. But the problem is that usually a case study is on one individual or a small group with very similar characteristics. So if we think about attachments, we've got people like Jeannie, and we've got Freudian Dan with the war orphans, we've got the Kolochova twins. These are individuals who, fortunately for us, we don't find too many of them, but they have all common experiences, but they are small in number. And the problem with that is, obviously, because of that, we can't generalize. They may also be a very biased sample because we're looking at them specifically. For example, with patient X, we're looking at them, they've already had some scenario happen to them. So they are already what we would call atypical, not typical of most people. And therefore we're limited in generalizing from them. Okay. The other thing, of course, is we have a subjective interpretation of what's going on. So they'll tell us things, we'll interview other people, but then we will edit that, we will pick out bits, and our bias, whether we like it or not, will come into that. So it is our subjective interpretation. There will be researcher bias without any doubt. And that obviously is not what we're after with scientific psychology. With scientific psychology, we're after objective research. So that is a problem. However, on the other hand, we could say that because of this, because of one individual, it might lead to revision of a theory, for example, or the creation of a theory. So if we think about somebody like Tan with Broca's area, okay, and that was identifying that there was a problem in the left frontal lobe, and we identified, or Broca identified, that that was probably an area that was responsible for the production of speech. So things like that. And Jeannie, for example, when she was found at 14, she supposedly couldn't ever learn grammar. She could learn to repeat words, but not grammar. And that then led to the theory that there was a critical period for learning how to speak with grammar and to have proper speech, as opposed to just learning a string of words. Okay, so we've got examples. A single case can actually lead to a theory or even revision of a theory. So there are strengths of it, and that's what they were after. If we have a look at the mark scheme, the level, the levels rather. Level 3, again, what we're after, marks 4 to 5. Evaluation of the use of case studies is very clear and accurate. There's at least one strength and at least one limitation, though a number of points may be presented in less detail. The answer is obviously clear and organised, and again, we must be using specialist terminology, okay, so as we've talked about up here. Also, application to the case of patient X may be present, but for this question, it's not essential for full marks. They are accrediting you for just evaluating the use of case studies, like, as an example, patient X.